Hello everybody, my name is Kai, and welcome back to Warframe. Today we'll be talking about Gara and why I believe her to be one of the strongest and most underrated frames in the entire game by far. With just one of the builds that I would like to show you today that I have deemed the Touch of Death Gara, because yes, all you need to do is touch enemies and they will die. You surely will see her power after this is over. But before we get started, I would just like to remind everybody that I do have a Patreon now. Go check it out at the link in the description below to directly influence what gets made on the channel and help support me a little bit. A huge thanks to all of my supporters, The Bad Monk, Scotty Nose, Young Mung, Ward Platypus, Matt Goat, and Airzos. You guys are awesome and help make all of this possible. But getting on back to Gara and her first ability, Shattered Lash. Tapping the ability will have her thrust her longsword forward and deal puncture damage, while holding down will do an arcing slash of slash damage. Against enemies, the tap version does have a little bit of punch through and can hit multiple enemies, but compared to the hold version of its arcing slash, there is no comparison. Which is why today we will be mainly focusing on the hold version, because it also deals slash damage, which is far superior compared to puncture damage. To make our lives a little bit easier, go into your settings and go to the invert tap hold abilities, and under Gara, make sure you switch it to inverted, as this will allow you to tap her Shattered Lash ability instead of holding it to do the arcing swing. Finally, Shattered Lash is affected by stat sticks. What is a stat stick? A stat stick is a melee weapon that you use to mod a Warframe's ability. Stat sticks are melee weapons that enhance your Warframe's abilities kind of indirectly. Their stats themselves don't matter, only the mods that you put on them, and also the Riven disposition, and in some other cases they're passive, but we're not going to really be discussing that much here because this is a Rivenless build. If you're using a stat stick, you should not be using it to damage enemies, as it is only there to buff your Warframe's ability, in this case of course being Shattered Lash. Because of this, it means that you can use any melee weapon to mod a stat stick, and it does not matter except for the Zorus, the Tenant Livia, and the Tenant Grigori, as they reset your combo counter whenever you use any of the abilities affected by stat sticks, which is a huge DPS loss. When building the stat stick, we mainly want to focus on base damage multipliers like Prime Pressure Point and Spoiled Strike, and the negative 20% attack speed does not affect Pseudo Exalteds. After this, the most desired stat is elemental damage, so we will be building for corrosive through the use of Prime Fever Strike and Shocking Touch. Prime Fever Strike gives a huge bonus, and then besides that, we also are going to be building for Blast, as it is the only other elemental combo that we can make here. But it should be noted that elemental combos like this don't directly translate over to your Shattered Lash. As in, when I use this, I will not be hitting enemies for corrosive or blast damage. The elemental damage that they provide is still used in the final damage calculation, so we do choose to use all 4 elements here. After this, the only mods left to use are slash mods. We are using the slash version of Shattered Lash, so Buzzkill and Carnus Mandible provide us with a lot more slash, which will increase our damage similar to the elemental mods earlier. We aren't using any crit mods here because normally Shattered Lash cannot crit under any circumstances, so there's no reason to use any damage multipliers. If you have a Riven mod that has base melee damage as a stat, I recommend you use it, as that is by far the most important stat for her Shattered Lash. And there are other weapons like the Jaw Sword that have augments, like Blade of Truth for this one specifically, that increase melee damage, which makes them the best choice, but the build that I showed earlier is universal and can go on anything. Overall, this setup works. Build a combo with your melee weapon to get a final 4 times damage multiplier, and then hit enemies with your Shattered Lash, and it does decent damage, but it can get a lot better than this. At base, Gara has a 0% critical chance on her Shattered Lash, and that means that even modding with crit chance mods like Sacrificial Steel or Blood Rush will just multiply your 0%, leaving you still with 0. But obviously, as you can see here, I'm able to hit crits with my Shattered Lash very consistently, and this is achievable by using Arcane Avenger and Cat's Eye, 2 mods or arcanes that provide you with flat crit chance, which means that even though Shattered Lash is a 0% crit chance, we can bring it up to 105 with these abilities. But the synergies do not stop there. We are using Combat Discipline for consistency on our Avenger proc since it requires self-damage, but that synergizes really nicely with our helmet ability today, which is Nourish. Nourish does a lot for Gara on this build specifically. One, it provides an energy multiplier, multiplying all sources of energy income, which when paired with Equilibrium makes health orbs give you a lot of energy, which is nice for Gara as she has a very spammy playstyle with expensive abilities. It also gives you a viral damage buff to all of your weapons, which does apply to your stat stick as if you had viral modded on it, which is obviously a damage increase. And then finally, it gives you an AoE viral prime every time you take damage with a slight cooldown. This not only gives Gara more damage on her Whip Claw, it also takes more enemies damaged as they will be afflicted with 1 or multiple viral stacks, and removes the need for Energize on the build as the energy multiplier that Nourish gives is very, very strong. We can add even more multipliers to this build through the use of her new augment, Shattered Storm. Gara's second ability, Splinter Storm, is the third part of the Touch of Death build and very, very strong. Casting this ability on yourself allows you to get up to a 90% damage reduction and also an aura of glass shards that float around you, which will damage enemies as you walk by them, dependent on the meter you have in the bottom right of your screen. It can also be casted on enemies as a damage multiplier, taking the damage of this Lex Prime from 18 to 30. So with using Shattered Storm, we get to the fourth piece of Gara's kit, Mass Vitrify. Vitrify has Gara become invulnerable and immobile and create a ring of expanding molten glass that will petrify enemies caught or touched by it within 3 seconds. Shattering this wall with your Shattered Lash will cause a glass explosion that will deal damage as if you had struck every enemy in the immediate area with Shattered Lash. And it also spreads Splinter Storm to every enemy because of the augment, which introduces us to the final, most powerful synergy between Mass Vitrify and Splinter Storm. If you shatter your Vitrify wall with Shattered Lash while Splinter Storm is active, you add 50% of the dealt damage to your Splinter Storm's damage counter, which can stack pretty much infinitely and allows you to just, like I said before, walk past enemies and kill them. Casting Mass Vitrify with Splinter Storm active also refreshes its duration, which means Gara does not need a lot of duration, although we do still build for a moderate amount because we do not want to have to be recasting Nourish all the time. This leads us to the fully realized build of priming enemies with Vitrify and the augment to then kill them, which triggers combat discipline, which sends out a viral priming wave, and then we just walk past enemies and they just die. And this is only at 1,000,000 damage. And because we're using discipline to proc our Nourish, we also get the bonus from Avenger, which further increases the damage of our Shattered Lash in case we even wanted to use that, which is further buffed by Nourish's viral damage increase. Besides that, we build for median stats, but no efficiency, even though we spam a lot because Nourish has an energy multiplier. The stats of that we get from Strength being Umbral Intensify and Transient Fortitude. The negative of Transient is offset by Prime Continuity, and then Equilibrium allows us to pick up Health Orbs, which gives us energy and is multiplied further by Nourish. We can do this because we use a Panzerwelpaphyla with the Synth Set mods, which allows us to pick them up. And Augur, Reach, and Stretch provide us with a decent range on Mass Vitrify to prime enemies and a good 4.5 meter range on Splinter Storm to walk near people. Adaptations DR stacks with Splinter Storms to give us a total of 99%. And then in our Exilus slot, I like to use Preparation to get the rotation started because if you don't have it, it's a little bit difficult here. Arcane Fury also provides Shattered Lash with more base damage, which is something it really, really likes. Personally, I find this setup to be one of the most OP Gara builds and probably OP builds in general. The synergies here are absolutely crazy, as we have Combat Discipline giving us the buff of Arcane Avenger, which buffs all of our weapons, and our Shattered Lash, which allows it to crit, which is a 2.5x damage multiplier here. It also procs Nourish, which is a viral AoE stun and an energy multiplier for the build, which means we can spam. Mass Vitrify provides damage to our Splinter Storm and damage to enemies, while also priming them with the augment. All of that in total adds up at 200% strength for a 7.2x damage multiplier when walking by enemies with your Splinter Storm. So it's as if I walk by these enemies right now and I'm hitting them for 14 million damage. You can use a very similar build that makes use of Eclipse to really build up the damage on your Splinter Storm much quicker. There's no really cool synergies here and you should use Steel Charging your aura, but the damage on your Splinter Storm builds so ridiculously fast that doing this for like a minute would get you to a really high number very quickly. To get a longer combo duration, just use the Dexterity Arcanes on both your primary and secondary, and make sure you use Naramon, as losing your combo neuters this build aggressively. That is going to be it for this one on Gara, everyone. This is probably one of my favorite builds that I've ever made. I mean, everything in here works so absolutely well together, and being able to just walk by enemies with this insane amount of damage and then multiply it by 7 is crazy. Like, you don't even need the multipliers from Viral or the Arcane Avenger proc on your Shattered Lash, like, to do real damage, as you already do ridiculous numbers, but they just boost it even further. So I just want to say thank you everyone for watching this video. I hope it was informative and that you enjoyed it. This build is absolutely crazy, and I hope that you find some enjoyment out of it by yourself. But yeah, thank you everybody. I appreciate the growth that we've been having. Absolutely crazy. We hit 6K on the road to 10K, and that's going to be a crazy milestone. So I hope you're all doing well, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.